How you guys doing? I was fixing the light there. Oh, hi, Big Sal. Good to see you. Oh boy, we've been having crazy weather, and I mean, like rain, but really high thing. Hey, neighbor, how you doing? Um, and today it's going to be cold all day long. So if I go out, I'm going to have to put on my big coat, which is a hassle. Good morning, hubby and Dom. Good to see you guys. Hey, is the sound in the video okay? Everything working all right? Anyway, uh, hi, Owen. How are things on the Emerald Isle? Good, good, good. Well, hi, John. Oh, Mexico, Sayuita, Sayuita. Huh. I spent a lot of time in Mexico. Okie doke. Here's what I wanted to talk about today is our source of information. Good morning, William. Oh, bragging about the Florida Keys. I'd love to spend some time in the down in Key West. Um, okay, let me see it get refocused again. I was looking at this watch and I was trying to find the movement on it, and so I started looking around all these different places, and one of the things that I noticed was that they didn't have the reference number on the movement. All of them, none of them did, but they all seemed to say pretty much the same thing. And after a while, I realized that what they all had done with very little editing was to put out whatever the company's press release was. Now, a press release, I don't know. I sort uh, on company pronouncements about their watches, I don't always believe them. On press releases, I don't believe at all. I mean, these are like, I don't know, they're fantasies. It's sort of like, they get a unicorn and a rainbow and start throwing confetti to talking about their watches. And when they don't have the reference number for the movement, I get really suspicious. So anyway, I dug around until I finally found it, and somebody didn't get the memo. Don't tell them about the movement. So I finally located it. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was what you use as sources of information when you're trying to pin something down. Um, to me, unfortunately or fortunately, it's sort of an obsession. Whenever I had a research paper I was doing or a book or something like that, I'd always make sure all the references were right, and then I would check and double check and everything like that, just out of habit. One of the things, if you publish something and somebody said, "Wait a minute, what about this? This was found in another research project," then that could be very embarrassing. And so you just get used to checking everything out. And I just do that not because I'm worried about somebody else. There's usually nobody else to worry about, but rather just because I want to know this stuff. Yeah, that's how, it's like it's sort of fun, like panning for gold. You're doing it because you're trying to find some little thing. Now, the question is, if you're panning for gold, you got to know where to go. And with information, the same thing is true. And one of the things I had, see, I have it right here. Now, Europa Star, is one of the magazines that I get free because I'm a member of the Horological Society of New York. Let me put that out. No matter where you are in the world, the Horological Society of New York is well worth it as a watch organization. And then they have things all over the world too. But for some reason, I have more trust in this than other things. I think one of the reasons is that they go into some depth. I mean, they don't just take some of the stuff is pretty much what you'd expect. But then they have things like this is that, like, here's an article on it's called Concentration Continues in Watch Distribution. And then they have charts and different kinds of things like that. At the same time, they got these ads about watches and so forth, and they pretty much, you can't bite too hard the hand that feeds you, and it's important to understand that. I mean, it's sort of like, they could do something about a watch, and they could find something about it they don't particularly like, but would they concentrate more on the parts that they do like? Probably would, you know. So, but you gotta, in looking at this stuff, you can't sort of like, oh, they're all awful. Uh, by mistake, they could be some really good stuff. So, anyway, okay, let's see what's going on. Hey there, Eric. Lix, Lix Tetrix. Good morning to you, John. JJ Lee. Hey Lee, how's it going? DeMarco? Hi, DeMarco. Vodquest. Okay. Oh, Owen. Owen's got something. Suppose depends on the source. A little bit of hyperbole is almost expected with watches. Nice to be able to get to the facts straight to, though. Yeah, to me, the hyperbole is totally useless. Except when we're talking about our own watch. then it's then it's elegant, it's lyrical, it's poetry. I understand that. Owen's so good at it. um Hi Tuna, how you doing? Lots of magazines on watches have more advertisement than content. Yeah, they do. That's absolutely right. I don't know, I mean, if they're watch magazines with more advertisement than anything else, they're not too useful for me, really. I don't spend time on it. That's how come I like a Europa Star, is that they'll have something that that watch companies need objective information about. In other words, some guy is saying, well, what are the distribution channels like in Timbuktu or something like that, and they're that's something that they may have. I also have a lot of times I'll go back to some really basic stuff like George Daniels' watchmaking book. And you go back there and you look at that. I was looking up some stuff on what are they called? Keyless mechanisms, keyless works in watches, and so I thought, well, I'll go take a look at George Daniels. And then I remember George Daniels said that anybody who couldn't hold on to a key to wind a watch was this guy's he's half crackpot, and the other half is genius watchmaker. So I wasn't sure whether that would be the best source or not. And this is the kind of thing, to me anyway, that makes it really a lot of fun. There are a lot of what I found out dumb questions. They're not so much dumb questions as they're lazy questions. I mean, it's sort of like the question that you get in some of these Facebook pages and places like that, or Instagram, and you'll put up a picture of a watch, and somebody says, "How much?" Well, look it up, sucker. Because if you're in if you're in the U.S., you might be able to find one thing. If you're in Germany, you may be able to find another. It depends where you are to a great extent of where you can buy watches, and so it's that kind sort of thinking, I think, that you look at a lot of different little nooks and crannies and so forth. Plus, there's sort of the logic, but every now and not every now and then, all the time, I get asked about, well, what about this or what about that? And some of it are lazy. Just well, I don't want to look it up. I'll ask Bill, and Bill is dumb enough to oh boy, dickety dog, and I'll go out and gather up all the information. But that's a that's sort of a thing is that still you go back, you depend on the source a great deal. Also, too, there was this watch company. This guy has been bugging me about, oh, what about these watches? Will you go look at these watches? Like, why me? I mean, you guys can do it. Anybody can do it themselves. Well, so I find, I'll go look at it. And usually, just about every time somebody says, "Oh, go look at these watches," I find something really interesting. And this happened again, and it happened because of a watch movement maker that I have a great deal of respect for based on a single movement that I like that they have. So, I wouldn't depend on me either if I were you. Um, but who out there gives a straight scope? Lee, I tell you, that's exactly the right question. Where are you going to get the right dope from? There's something else too that I found. You have people who are sincere, honest, and they're probably go to heaven, and they get something totally wrong, not because they were fibbing about it, or not because they were running for Congress, but rather they just screwed it up. That's happened to me before too. But um, I think going back to Lee's is that there's certain things that you can more or less trust, and other ones you can't. There's certain people whose I don't know if it's their opinion I respect, but there's something about them that I respect in terms of their knowledge about watches, but I don't always trust it, not because I think the information is inaccurate. It's because they're selling watches. I mean, if I were selling watches, I'm just going to sort of polish up one side and not the other. If there's if I got two brands, one I'm selling and getting these, big discounts on, and another one that you barely have a margin, I'm going to go after the other one. I mean, so, but knowing that kind of thing, I think just knowing sort of the kinds of people you're dealing with and what they're doing is part of what you know. So you have that. And going back to Lee's question, who do you know is really, really going to give you the right stuff? The ranchers are straight. Come on, Lee. Don't pick on Rancher. Hi, hater. There he is. Okay. Voltglass, 50% of global business spending is ads. This doesn't uh, help companies as much, plus 0% on average, as financial redistribution. It's great when ads are art, 100%, 100 greatest advertisement. That's something else too. I've been asking. You take that statement, 50% of global business spending is ads. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. Maybe that was a figure you pull out the top of your head. This is the kind of stuff. This is how come I like things like um, Europa. Uh, it will give you some statistics on it. It's sort of like I'm still mad at the Wall Street Journal from God 40 years ago when they didn't tell me about this one of the many crashes they've had. But by and large, you go to the Wall Street Journal and you can, they have really pretty good information. Um, when I was doing a lot of stuff and looking at new computers and things, one thing I learned is that there are a lot of watch magazines, there are a lot of computer magazines, and that kind of stuff. And they just like watch magazines. They came out with things that were, some really good, some not so good. Uh, Ones like Wired were more of a sort of like popular psychology. They were okay, but I don't know. And the sometimes the most important things is that if you read it carefully, you look for what's missing. There was a famous Sherlock Holmes story called Silver Blaze, and Sherlock solved it. Of course, poor old Dr. Watson and Inspector Lestrade missed it, and the clue was that the dog was not barking. And I think those things I think are very important to look for and listen for. What is what are they not telling us? Let me give you something that happened recently. There was this guy who said, "Oh, this watch company, they got a bunch of complaints and they're terrible and yada yada yada." So, oh, okay. I said, "Where is that? Where did you find that?" No response. I mean, you have. I mean, if I find out something about that, somebody says, "Oh, something's really bad" or "something's really wrong," um, I'll follow it up. I mean, it's sort of like you always going back to Lee's point. Who you going to trust? I don't know. Hey, Bill, how you doing? Calvin, how are you? Love my skinny Timmy who puts your paw. Okay. Hey, John. I always thought Watch Time was a good magazine. So do I. I like Watch Time also. Um, there are some people in it. I mean, some of the writers that there's a point of accuracy and inaccuracy, and then there's the difference between sort of a shallow reporting and more in depth. The shallower, the less I really think about it. Now, you've got some poor watch writer, somebody gets a job writing for a magazine or a blog or whatever, and they're getting paid by the article. I don't know how good they're going to be. On the other hand, you have one of my favorite is Quill and Pad. And one of the funny things, it wasn't in Quill and Pad, I think it was another one I use a lot and some people hate, is Hodinky. I sort of like Hodinky, but that's another story. I'm sure they've had some things that may not be right. Who doesn't? But I was reading this thing about a guy who writes those things, and in fact, it could have been Watch Time. And he said how he was basically asking how are we to be believed writing for a magazine online or whatever that has advertising. And as that goes back to you simply leave out the things that aren't quite good. In other words, you leave out the bad. And I don't know. But he claimed no, we don't get anything from the top editor doesn't come down and say, "What are you trying to do? Make us go broke? Here we have a big, we just got $1 million contract for advertising for the next year, and you're gonna do this, or you're gonna write this about them." And uh, uh, that's why they have editors. Guy writes it out, and then some editor looks and goes over it. And sometimes the editorial is for more or as much for policy as it is for anything else. One of our sons has a one is an editor for one of the nightly news programs, and so and there it's and I've talked to him about it. I said, well, you got to edit stuff, and what they have to edit for all kinds of things with this kind of fact checking. And so they got to, so there's a news story, and they've got to go over it and polish it up and check out the facts and do all of this stuff before they let it through, plus policy. So it's hard. Hey, Truman, um, watch Box and Tim Mosso. He's knowledgeable, but he's a salesman first. Tim Mosso, I've said this several times. They had a double, triple Tim's pay. Tim could sell rowboats to desert rats. I mean, it's his. You're right. Everything you say, he's really accurate, he's spot on, and he sounds like the thing is good. The watch he's describing is yummy. Oh boy, and it just so happens they have them for sale on Watchbox. Yeah, Tim is a guy who's got great stuff. I'm afraid to listen or watch Tim because his stuff is so enticing. But that's what he's supposed to do. And but he's not a guy that I would dismiss as, telling a fib because I don't think he does it. He just makes what is sound so good. I mean, it's sort of like somebody who's a bad cook, and old Tim is talking about how they fix their meals, so he'll pick something that sounds really delicious. Hey, Nizar, how you doing? Or when the review does nothing but repeat the sales copy. Yeah, that was the press release. This is what I was talking about earlier, Clyde, is that this series I was looking at trying to find this, is that all they came out with was that, there are other things too that are sort of looking for clues. Looking for clues is there was this one watch company, the guy really sort of said it was, nah, they're terrible and everybody's complaining about them. And I like I said, I asked the guy, I said, well, give me the reference on that because I'd like to follow it up. Nothing. So I went and looked at the Facebook page of this watch company. And my God, usually when you see a Facebook page or something like that from a watch company, all of the watchmakers are wearing these, little white lab jackets with the name of the watch company on it, and they got either they got a loop on their eye or they have one of those wire things around their head, depending on what's fashionable at the time. you know, I get the ones I like are the one you just pop on your eye on your glasses because then they're in focus. But these guys look like you went down to the courthouse and you had some people doing community service. So all these guys who run them into the watch store. Okay, your community service is making watches. That's what the page looked like. I thought, my God, I was it was really just really amazing. Uh, Federico, who's another guy whose stuff I like. Federico had a thing on going down to 42nd Street. I think it was Federico. Could have been. Federico always tells me, "Don't go to 42nd Street, Bill." That's. I mean, it's like, uh, you know, this is not something that's good for you. 42nd Street is also called the Diamond District. It's right off of Fifth Avenue in New York City. If you're ever there, go to 47th Street. You can find some great watches there at some prices. It's also a place though that it doesn't look safe, but believe me, it is because there are all these undercover people hired by the watch companies, the diamond companies, and so forth, who are on the street. They're not in uniform, but they would kill you if you ever tried anything. Really an interesting place. Um, anyway, they had a they have a watch repair place that is like an open area, and they got all these watchmakers out there doing stuff. And one day I lost a screw on one of the watches. I'd taken the back off, and boop, and off the screw went into the black hole of watch parts where I've made my contributions. And so the guy is so you open it up and there's a guy. This is like pops open the back, and he finds a screw and screws it in and charges me way too much. But the place was like you've got like these little cubicles around, and so I guess if you wanted to, set up your own watch repair place in New York, you could go there. And these guys are, and Federico is saying, "My God, they don't have the, you got." I always keep even watches that I have a hard time with. You keep under a little dust cover like this, and so you're going to keep all the dust off of it and the crud off of it. These guys didn't bother with that. It was really funny. I keep all of my tools in these little drawers, stuff like that, and I'm not as sort of like surgical room kind of safe with my all of my watch stuff as some guys are. But if you look at the pictures that most watch companies will have about that. They'll have everybody there. These places immaculate. The people are immaculate, and they're going to town on some watch or something. But but after I saw this page, I thought, oh my God, these guys probably are a little mm, something to worry about. Surprising, nobody is talking about watch catalogs. The more, the better. Many reference points. John, um, now I get these watch catalogs in the mail. If this is what you're thinking about, like Gray and Sons. Years ago, I bought a watch from Gray and Sons, and ever since then, I get their magazine. I guess I don't know if that's the kind of catalog you're talking about, or there's something like a regular catalog. I don't think they're doing that much anymore, primarily because they can do it online and distribute it, throughout the universe. Whereas the mail things are oftentimes they'll make it from the mailbox to the recycle before anybody really pays that much attention to them. Hi Nizar, how you doing? Thomas, I personally use public auction. Ooh, you're right, Thomas. Public auctions, yes, I agree. If you look at the ones I look at are Phillips, Sotheby's, Christie's. Those are the main three that I look at. They have really good watch information. I'm not sure why. It may have to do with some kind of legal aspect. I'm not sure what it is, but you're right, Thomas. That's a great resource. Is go to a auction, take a look at their descriptions of the offerings that they have. Did you see Fed's fake watch vid? No, I didn't. I guess I don't know. On fake watches, they have these new fake watches called super fakes. I don't know. I'll take a look at Fed's thing on that. V3 Nizar, tell me V3290 of Swiss Soprod, reliable caliber. Funny thing, Nizar, I was just looking at that caliber. I really like it. It's got a nice big balance wheel. It looks like it's well finished. It looks very good to me, but I haven't done anything with it. It's a 4 hertz movement with I think it's an automatic. Again, it's really funny. Right before we started, I was looking at that for something. I forgot what, but that looks like a really good movement. By and large, that movement I just pulled out there in the dust cover, that was a Soprod, and they're great. But Soprod's that's a really funny thing. They're owned now by Fetzler. It's a Spanish group that owns a number of watch companies, and Sopra is one of the ones they own. I have a lot. I like Sopra. I'll put it that way. Hey, Dark Star. Seen more videos also on fake Rolex, maybe getting paid by Rolex AD to promote the authentic certification. That's that's certainly possible. Dark Star. I don't know whether they'd pay anybody to do anything. No, maybe you're right. Hey, Rancher, disagree with the auction. Based upon conversations with an insider, would discuss this off air. Okay. I believe, it's like if somebody says there's something that the watch companies are doing that's not quite right, you don't have to sit on top of me to convince me of that. No, there's too many examples. So I will find out. Hey, Tim, good to see you. Uh, Super fakes are some marketing trash. They aren't any good anywhere, in fact. Differences are obvious from a glance. Okay. All right. My time is up. Um, anyhow, I if you come across something interesting in terms of information or information sources, I'd like to know about it. This afternoon, what I'd like to do, I'd like to gather up some good and bad examples of this and say, look, this is the kind of stuff that's baloney, and this stuff is probably something that you can have some faith in. Anyway, see you guys. Have a great day, and maybe I'll be back at 4 o'clock New York time.